Welcome. This is Senator's Garden. A little bit more relaxed style show where we're going to talk about some gardening tips. So grab a glass of water, cup of tea, and sit down and let's talk about some gardening. So the first video is going to be on planning out your garden. There's, the top two things you want to think about are soil and sun. For soil, understand that not all soil is arable. Not all soil will grow crops. If you've worked the land before, or you've seen someone work that land before, great, you're good. If you haven't, consider getting your soil tested. You don't want to waste your time. If your soil is not arable, it doesn't mean you can't grow crops. It just means you may have to add soil or add fertilizer. You can also consider remediating that soil. You can talk about that later. Also, the best thing you can do is start a compost pile. So after soil, sun. If you're doing a vegetable garden, chances are all of your plants are going to need full sun. The more sun, the better. So you're going to want to grab a tape measure and let's go into the yard, figure out, the dimensions, the spot that you want to do your garden, consider the amount of sun. Soil's probably the same everywhere. Grab out a pen and paper, and then you can draw the shape of the garden you want to plant. So once you have that dimensions, once you have your little sketch, you want to decide if you're going to plant in rows, which is the most efficient way to plant, or if you want to do beds. If you don't have a lot of space, rows might be the better option for you. If you have some space, like I got a little bit of space, I'm going to do beds. I'm going to do beds because when I'm in the garden doing some weeding or, trimming up the plants, doing some pruning, it's nice to be able to set your knees, on some wood instead of the dirt, especially on a rainy day. When you're going to do beds, you want to consider, how many plants you want, and then what the layout's going to be. Some plants you can plant closer together, some plants you can plant further apart. If you're looking up online, how close can I plant my tomatoes together? It's going to say 24 to 36 inches. That is more geared towards people that are doing, mechanized planting. People that are going to try and plant, 1,000 tomatoes. If you have a smaller garden, consider, planting a little bit closer together. You can probably get away with 18 inches with some tomatoes, depending on how big they're going to get. But, when you see those recommendations online, think to yourself that a lot of that is more geared towards, people and tractors and how far they're going to plant apart. You can tighten them up, especially if they're in beds. You can plant sort of towards the perimeter of those beds. And if you plant towards the perimeter of the beds, then they're easier to weed, they're easier to work on. So before you plant, you're going to have to turn over the soil. You're going to want to grab a tiller or a rake or, a shovel, however you want to do it. You're going to want to turn that soil over. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a tiller. I got an old tiller in the shed. Fire that thing up. And since it's pretty dry today, I'm going to wet the ground. It's going to be harder to till dry soil. If you wet it up a little bit, it'll be a little bit easier. All right, let's get to it.
So fresh, so new. Freedom. It's all for you. All for you. Freedom. Keep your ear to the ground. Talking about the freedom. It's the best show in town. Best show in town. Freedom. Well. Freedom. I'll give you freedom. Yes, it's right. Freedom. Start right now. Freedom. Get your freedom tonight. Freedom. Well. Freedom. Come on, everybody. Young, old, all you lovers. This is our time to rise back from the sand and claim our freedom. Talking about the freedom. Got to do it. Let yourself be free. I give you freedom. Yes, it's right. Freedom. Start right now. Talking about the freedom. Get your freedom tonight. Freedom. Yes, it's right. Freedom. Let yourself be free. Start right now. Freedom. Get your freedom tonight. Freedom. Well.
All right, some final thoughts. I wish that I would have wet the ground before I got the tiller out. You only have so much sunlight during the day, so when you're out there working in the yard, get as much work done as possible. But if I would have planned the day a little bit better, I would get that sprinkler out there, and then I wouldn't have to work around it the whole time. So I have a tree in the corner of the space that I want to plant the garden. So I'm not going to put a bed right underneath it because it's not going to get enough sun. It's sort of on the property line, so I want to speak to my neighbor about, hey, it's all right if I trim down some of those lower branches. And also, maybe don't put the tomatoes where I'm getting a lot of shade. Maybe put the tomatoes further out, and then I can put, some of the herbs where I don't need a very large crop. Maybe some of those would be better near that space. But overall, the tiller did the work. It's seen a couple better days. It has 2 wheels, and about halfway through, one of the wheels popped off, but the motor ran great. So, happy to have turned around that soil. And now the next step for me is to create a barrier. You want to do all this work, and then the deer come by and just eat your lunch. So next video, gonna build a fence.